All right. Well, I'd like to welcome everybody to our next Indispensable Leader Gathering here at Ability Ministry. I'm so excited because in this episode, we're going to talk about something that many churches never consider, yet can be a very powerful ministry. We're going to talk about residential ministry today on our Indispensable Leader Gathering. And I'm so excited today to be able to introduce you to Rhonna. Rhonna is our Director of Residential Services at Ability Ministry, and she is awesome if you don't know her. And you are going to love hearing some of the things that she has today about residential ministry. So, Rhonna, I want to start off with a really simple question. I don't want you to think too much about it. I just want you to tell me what you think of, maybe the first thing that comes to mind when you hear the word residential ministry.
Off the top of my head, the first word that came to my mind was belonging to a community. A lot of residential facilities have people that are similar. Mm-hmm. And with that, there's a sense of belonging. Everybody needs to belong and wants to feel belonged and wants to feel needed. So when I think of a residential ministries, I think of a sense of belonging to something, being able to work together as a community.
I love that answer. I love the idea of belonging. We all want to belong to something, and that's something that God has created inside of us, that need to belong. Now, Rhonna, when I threw that question at you, I was kind of thinking as a ministry leader in a local church, if somebody came up to me and said, "Hey, the church needs to start a residential ministry," I'm thinking as a ministry leader in a church, I'm thinking I'm terrified in the moment, like, that's something that's way too big that we could never, ever accomplish. So I'm never going to even think about it from this moment forward. So that's kind of where I was coming from that. But I love your answer about belonging because it's so true. We all need a place to belong. All people have a place of belonging in the kingdom, and residential ministry does provide that for people. Well, let me kind of make this a little bit more personal for you, to give you an opportunity to kind of talk a little bit about yourself, to help everybody get to know you and your story. Why don't you tell us just briefly how long you have been working in residential ministry? Tell us just a little bit about your story, kind of how you got started.
It is actually 31 years this month that I have worked in this field in residential.
That's amazing.
I know, I'm old. I mean, just wow. 1989 is when I started as a part-time resident manager, and that was through Johnson University, and Dr. Pearson was there. And so there was a job opening, and I went in starting on weekends, working every other weekend. And that was it for me. I walked in the door and fell in love, and that's where I knew that's where I was supposed to be, whether it was at Riverwood or whether it was serving people with a developmental disability. That's where I was to be, and I knew that beyond a shadow of a doubt.
Wow, 31 years. That's just so amazing, because especially because in the field of disability services in general, whether it's residential, whether it's ministry, whether it's working at a day program, the burnout rate is just unbelievable. And you see that most people that get in the field are out of the field in really just a couple of years because of how taxing it is. I want to zoom maybe backwards a little bit to 1989. You said you walked in the door and you were hooked. Tell us about that experience. What exactly was it that hooked you to maybe to Riverwood specifically, but to the idea of giving your entire career to residential ministry?
I was real nervous about going into a group home because there was 20 people there, and I was the outsider, and I didn't know what to expect. Initially, for me, was just I needed the income to help support my family. And I thought, okay, this I could do.
Mm.
So I was nervous wreck going in there thinking, okay, how am I going to do this? They may not like me. And when I walked in the door, one of the residents, his name is Tom Keck, was standing there with a chef's hat on and some frilly plaid apron with a wooden spoon. And I walked in and he looked at me and he goes, "Who are you?" And I said, "Well, I'm Rhonna Miller." And he goes, "Oh, I'm Tom Keck. I'm the chef. Come on in." And just that quick, in that moment, I knew in my heart that this was the right place for me. Very natural. There was no pretense about it, and just very direct. Who are you? And why are you here? And from that point on, I just knew I had to stay. I was hooked with their love and just the acceptance of me right off the bat. I didn't have to pretend to be anybody that I wasn't. And that was what sold it for me.
Wow. Now that sounds really refreshing. I mean, you talked about the word belonging. It sounds like the moment you encountered Tom in the chef's hat. It's funny that you could still see that to this very day, as if you're walking in the door for the first time. I love it. You said, you didn't have to pretend to be somebody you weren't. So often in life, in ministry, we feel like we have to pretend, to be, whether it be, living up to someone else's expectations or being better than, we are. And just, it's exhausting. And it's just interesting that the moment you walked in the door, you were loved, accepted for who you were. And you didn't have to pretend. And I find that like so refreshing that you found that, and that you were like, man, I can't imagine being anywhere else. So I personally, I'm just thankful that you've not, run away and found somewhere else to work. Selfishly, we love having you as the director of our residential services at Ability Ministry. But for those ministry leaders that are tuning in and wondering about residential ministry, there are a lot of different kinds of residential ministry. There's a lot of different ways to be involved in residential ministry. And for many coming in with very little knowledge of residential ministry, I'm wondering, Rhonna, if you could just take a couple minutes and tell us, what does residential ministry look like at both Riverwood and New Hope, the two different communities that you manage. Talk to us about what residential ministry looks like in Tennessee and Missouri.
Okay. I kind of look at what we do as an extension of the family and our church family, because we provide homes for 27 people right now. And we become an addition to the family, if you will. I have most of the residents at Riverwood refer to me as Mom. Wasn't something that I asked them to call me. I guess it's just because I act like their mom. I call them out when they're misbehaving, and I make sure that they get hugs and, high fives and all that kind of thing. But it's a family atmosphere. And parents are wanting that, and they're needing that. They want the assurance that when they pass away, that someone is going to take care of them. And at Riverwood and New Hope, that's what we do. We provide them with their own bedrooms, and it's a home just like yours is. It has TV and cable, and the difference is that we have 19 other people that live with us at Riverwood, and 7 other people that would live with us at New Hope. And so we become a family. We go to work every day. We take them to their doctor's appointments, their dentist appointments, whatever their physical needs are, we try to meet those needs. But on top of that, and most importantly, it's a spiritual need that we provide. Everybody needs the Lord. That's what it says. You know, go tell everybody. It's not selective. Everybody means everybody. And at Riverwood and New Hope, we include them in that salvation experience. They need to know the Lord. Their souls have value. And we live together, we worship together, we sing together, we love one another as family. In fact, just a couple weeks ago, we had a celebration of life for Tim. And Harry, one of our residents, got up and said, "You don't have to be blood to be family." And I loved that, because that's exactly right. I love them unconditionally. They love me unconditionally. And parents need that assurance. So what makes us different than most is because we are a Christian faith-based organization, and we provide them with everyday life things, the same things that you and I do every day. That's what we do at our facilities.
I love those words. You don't have to be blood to be family. Man, that is powerful. And I like the fact that Rhonna, you look at the whole person. You know, yes, you provide a roof over someone's head. And I think sometimes people might get hung up and think, okay, residential ministry, group homes, different facilities, we're meeting those basic needs, right? The basic needs, you know, shelter and food. And I think sometimes people kind of stop there, you know, okay, we've provided shelter and food, and that's all somebody needs. And I love the fact that, you know, that's just the starting point. You know, you're talking about shelter, you're talking about food, you're talking about love, you're talking about belonging, you're talking about being connected to God's family, you know, not just the family atmosphere that you provide at Riverwood and New Hope, but the fact that you introduce them to being a part of God's family. You know, there's some really crazy thoughts out there that, you know, people with intellectual developmental disabilities don't need to know or hear about hear about Jesus and the gospel, because, you know, they can't understand it. And, you know, nothing could be further from the truth. You know, when we look at scripture, it tells us clearly that Jesus died for all, and that all who believe. It doesn't say only if you have an IQ score above 70 are you eligible for that. You know, belonging is for everybody. And I love that that you include that. And I'd be willing to bet, you know, Rhonna, in you know, the 31 years that you've done this, and all the different families that you've encountered, I'd be willing to bet, you know, in that intake process, as you're, you know, looking at new residents, one of the things that is important to families is that spiritual component. So, you know, I'd be willing to bet that, you know, that sets apart, you know, somebody that's going to be doing residential ministry versus just providing a roof over somebody's head. It's going to be more attractive because families do value that, and that's important to them. Well, let's turn a corner here, and let's think about leaders in the local churches, okay? Because many of the people that are going to be tuning into our indispensable leader gatherings are either volunteer ministry leaders or they are paid staff at churches. Let me ask you this question. Why do you think churches shy away from residential ministry? Now, again, understanding that residential ministry, you know, looks different in a lot of different contexts, different states, different regulations, you know, all kinds of different things. But why do you think, Rhonna, that churches in general shy away from residential ministry, regardless of the form of it?
Okay. I I think most churches, not all, please understand, I'm not saying all churches, but I'm saying most churches suffer what I call spiritual visual impairment. And what I mean by that is this. They're not looking at the soul of the person with a developmental disability. All they see is the physical things, and they get stuck there. And it's a spiritual visual impairment to me. I can think of a couple of times when we've had residents that are sitting in church and can't always sit still, and they'll get up and move a lot. Or one young man used to say, "Amen, amen." And another guy one time when the preacher was talking, just in the middle of it, turned and said, "That looks like you." And people don't know how to handle that. So if your first encounter comes as someone standing up in the middle of church doing something that maybe they shouldn't be doing, but they can't help it, then you automatically, somewhere in the back of your mind, go, "I don't want to be a part of that. That's really disruptive." And then that's where you stop. I mean, I think of Nate, one of our residents at Riverwood. He doesn't do well in social groups. It is the hardest thing for that young man to stand with a group of people. He can't sit. And he normally stands in the back of the room. So if he were to go to a church and stand in the back, what would people do? He's not going to come and talk to them. And that makes me sad, because all they see is him in the corner, not the insight that he has, not the soul of him. So that's where I think the church is lacking. You know, scripture tells us that we're supposed to look at the inside and not the out. So that's what I refer as spiritual visual impairment. We're not seeing the whole thing.
So I think to go along with that, and this maybe just adds to what you're saying there, is you know, people live with a misconception of people that are living with, you know, different disabilities, regardless of, you know, the disability. People have misconceptions. In addition to misconceptions, people have certain fears, and whether they fear to interact. So a misconception of fear, you know, not seeing the full person, could be all reasons why a church leader might shy away from getting involved in residential ministry. Another thing that I think, another reason why, you know, churches and leaders maybe shy away from residential ministry is, again, going down that misconception or fear route, is the fact that they feel like it's something that they could never do. They would think it's too big, it's too overwhelming, it's too involved, or maybe their thought would be is, man, there's just not going to be enough return on our investment. You know, you hear about ROI a lot, return on investment, and I think what stops maybe a ministry leader before they even get started when it comes to residential ministry is they're like, oh my goodness, it would cost this many dollars to, you know, purchase a home, to turn it into a group home, or and we're only going to have, you know, 3 people live in it because of different state regulations, and then we have to staff it, and, you know, what really is that going to do for us? You know, so, and that's maybe a cynical way of looking at it, but I know that, you know, a lot of preachers count the cost, and they count the cost in dollar bills, and that stops them. And again, I think what you hit on is so true, is they miss out on the spiritual return on investment.
Correct.
That having a sense of belonging for all people provides a church. Now, again, I think that's looking at residential ministry through the lens of you have to own a home, you have to manage it,
Right.
you have to staff it. That's not necessarily what residential ministry can look like in
Correct.
the local church. There are a lot of different ways that the local church can do or be involved in some aspect of residential ministry without owning a home and staffing it. So, Rhonna, why don't you talk a little bit about this, because I think this is what local church leaders need to hear: is you don't have to own a home, you don't have to staff it to be
Yes.
involved in residential ministry. Tell us a few ideas on how people can be involved in residential ministry without managing a group home, because too many people are overwhelmed by that thought.
Well, first off, one of the very first things that came to my mind was hooking up with your local residential facility once a month and having your group go and have a Bible study with them.
Mm.
We have a church here that does that. Well, prior to the COVID, that was doing that once a month, and it was something that we looked forward to. And we'd sing a couple songs and just visit with each other, study the word. And then, of course, you know, there's always refreshments afterwards. It's a really huge incentive. And then the other thing is, a lot of churches are wanting to do missions but can't go out of the country right now. I know at Riverwood, we are always in need of some kind of a repair, whether it is an electrical repair, whether it is a maintenance repair. We've got a local church down here that I think once a month or once every 2 months, provides oil changes. I mean, that's a great idea. That way you can get to know people, and you're providing that kind of service, because we put an average of about 200 miles a day on our vans at Riverwood with all the van runs that we do. We could get an oil change every month. That adds up. But if you could do things like that, get a group of builders together to maybe make them a horseshoe pit or a volleyball court, or something like that, where people can get out and hang out together. The church can start an adopt a friend program. We have that here at Maryville First Christian. Set it up with the leaders of that facility and say, we'd like for you all to come to church. We'll meet you at the door, and then have a adopt a family kind of a day where that person comes from the group home, sits with the family, because it's hard to go to church and sit there by yourself.
Absolutely.
But if you have someone that would, adopt a friend, that you can worship together.
I absolutely love that, Rhonna, because, a lot of the people that are connected within our residential ministry, they do have family that check on them, love them, care for them. But we also have people that really have no one. And,
That's right.
and I'd be willing to bet that mix exists in almost every group home setting, residential setting, across our country. So an adopt a resident type of program is such a powerful way that you can get involved in residential ministry. I absolutely love that. And it's something that anybody can do.
Right.
Because guess what? This just comes down to being a friend.
That's right. Exactly.
Everybody knows how important it is to have a good friend, and everybody knows how important it is to be a good friend. And it's just a matter of being a friend. So I love that idea. I also love the fact that, you mentioned that, a church can get involved by going to a group home, doing a Bible study. One of the things that again, I think people overlook, and you hit on this, is the fact that group homes exist in every single community in our country.
Yes.
It is a mission field that exists in every community. You don't have to travel out of the country to reach that mission field. So you can go. And again, I think another thing that might stop people from getting involved is like, oh my gosh, I could never lead a Bible study. But again, you gave lots of practical ideas. It doesn't have to
Yes.
be a Bible study. It could be an
No.
oil. It could be an oil change. It can be, build a fire pit. It could be, doing any of those things that you mentioned, or delivering a plate of cookies to
Yes.
some of the staff members. One of the
Right.
things that I've suggested for a lot of churches to get to know the people in the group homes is not necessarily to work towards getting to know them first, but it's working to get to know the staff first.
Yes.
Bless the staff of a group home, and you'll win the
Amen.
residents. Okay.
Yes.
It doesn't always work the opposite way. Not all group homes and residential facilities are amazing. Like Riverwood, a lot of times, whether there's a staffing shortage in a group home, different things, a lot of times people don't get to go to church on Sunday morning because a staff member won't necessarily be willing to take them out and go to church on a Sunday. But if you work towards winning the staff member first, you've got a better chance of getting the residents to come to your church. So many different ways to get involved. You don't have to lead a Bible study to necessarily make a difference. And I love that. I absolutely love that. Well, Rhonna, as we begin to kind of wrap up our time here, you've given some great ideas on how people can be involved without necessarily owning or managing a group home. And I think that's important. You've shed some light on what residential ministry looks like for us. One thing before I kind of transition to the last question that I have for you, obviously 2020 has been a different year, and you talked a little bit about mission trips and about having needs for churches to come to us and how they haven't been able to do that because of the coronavirus. Why don't you talk a little bit about something that we are currently working on, the completion of our retreat center. And one of the things that I think maybe church leaders might be surprised about is just how many, I want you to talk about how many short-term mission groups come in a typical year to our Tennessee campus, because obviously this is not a typical year. But talk a little bit about what a typical year looks like, how many groups come, and what the future opportunities will be at the completion of our retreat.
Well, normally, starting in March and going all the way into late October, beginning in November, we generally have 16 to 18 groups that come. Each group has at least 20. One group had 35.
Wow.
And another group only had 10. But they come from all over the United States. And what they do is work for us 2.5 days a week. And we provide them with a list of things that we need to get done, whether it's our spring cleaning, whether it is flower beds, putting on a new roof, helping with the mowing, landscaping, all of those things. And with the retreat center, now we're going to have a really nice building that everybody will be able to stay on site with. I believe it's going to be able to house 35 people in it, if I'm not mistaken. And it's going to have the kitchen area. It's got a nice place there for fellowship area. And I think you're really, really going to enjoy doing it. And of every group that has ever come to Riverwood ends up, when they leave, saying this: I really thought that when I came here, I was going to change their lives. And then they say, but they ended up changing mine. And that's the beauty of it. When you come, we have a dinner together. We meet together every night and fellowship. We pray together, we laugh together, we exercise together, we play games, and then we'll have a meal, and we become friends. And that's the coolest thing about bringing any of your group to any facility. It's not just about meeting a need, it's about becoming a friend. We've had some of these groups have been coming for at least 24, 25 years.
Wow.
We've watched them grow up. They've watched us grow up. And it's a beautiful relationship, and it's the friendship that matters most. I love it when they come and do all the work for us, but my greatest satisfaction is when they walk away knowing that they've made a new friend. That's the coolest thing about it.
That is awesome. That is awesome. So in a given year, we will have typically, up to about 18 different short-term mission trips from churches domestically all over the country come to us, do some work for us. But the most important work is that relationship work that they get to interact with, worship with, be blessed by our residents, because that's their ministry, is blessing the people that come and changing their hearts and minds. Yeah, often not the opposite. So we're excited for the completion of our retreat center a little bit later this year, and we're going to be super excited to open it up and be inviting groups to come. And that might be, honestly, if you're watching this video, a great way for you to get a hands-on experience on what residential ministry can and should be like. We would encourage you to get in contact with Rhonna. You can find us at abilityministry.com, obviously, any of our social media pages, and you can find Rhonna's contact information. We'll add it to the video here as well, so you can easily get in contact with her. If you're interested in a domestic mission trip to a residential facility, to get your socks blessed off, because it is that type of experience anytime you encounter our friends. So Ron, I want to wrap up with this. If you could leave leaders in the local church, because that's typically who's watching these videos, with one word of encouragement, what would it be?
I really struggled with this. This was by far, I think, of all the questions, this was the most difficult to answer, because I didn't want to give a typical answer. I looked at love and peace and unconditional. But the word that I've chosen that I hope will give you some encouragement is the word beyond. And I say that because of this. You are building the future of our church as leaders. That's your job. That's what you've been called to do. And it's not a moment thing. It's not a current thing. It is a beyond thing. I want the leaders of the church to see our people with developmental disabilities at their soul. And they need to go beyond. We teach them beyond. Let's look beyond. We are going to heaven from here. It's beyond. What you're doing and teaching them is beyond this moment. It's the future. So hang in there and know that you're doing beyond, because that's what matters. That's the future, and the future of our church is in your hand. So make sure to give them beyond moments so that they'll see more than right here.
That's awesome. Rhonna, what a powerful word. And definitely any encounter that church leaders will have in residential ministry, whether it's dipping their toes in, reaching out to their local group home, going on a short-term mission trip to Riverwood, is going to be a beyond moment. It's going to open their eyes to the kingdom and to the heart of God in ways that they have never seen before. And I hope that everyone that has watched this video has been encouraged, has been challenged, and has been given a few creative ideas on how to reach out to their local communities and their local group homes, because there is a world within your community that needs to belong to God's kingdom. And it is up to you as a church leader to go beyond maybe your comfort zone. Because unless you step out past your comfort zone, get out of your church office and reach out to your community, many in your community will never find that place of belonging in the kingdom. So I hope that this video today, this Indispensable Leader Gathering, has been helpful to you to maybe open your eyes to residential ministry in a way that you've never considered before. And if you have more questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us at Ability Ministry. You can contact Rhonna directly with the contact information provided in this video. And she would be more than happy to continue this conversation with you. And we hope that some people that have watched this video will come on a short-term mission trip to our Riverwood campus in Tennessee to get to meet some of our amazing friends and family. They truly are a part of our family. And we hope that we'll see you at our new retreat center soon. Rhonna, thank you for blessing us today with this conversation. Thank you for challenging us. We appreciate you sharing wisdom and knowledge from over 31 years with us today in this Indispensable Leader Gathering. So thank you to all who have tuned in. Thank you, Rhonna, for sharing your heart with us today. We look forward to our next Indispensable Leader Gathering. Always check at Ability Ministry and abilityministry.com for further information and for future gatherings. Thanks for tuning in today.